Welcome to Matt's Turn Photography. Today I'll be taking you through the process that I follow when I edit my automotive photos. Um, so I'm going to do it very quickly. I've only got 10 minutes. I'm going to take you into Lightroom, and this is one that I just tweaked before I started this video, and that's more or less where we want to go to. So I'm going to go very quickly. I'm going to bring your attention to the fact that I shot relatively fast here. The setting of the camera was actually set to be shooting from that wall there when the cars comes past, but obviously with the cars coming into the pit I went quickly. So alright, let's have a look. F7.1, ISO 400, just to get a nice balanced picture, shot in camera raw so that I can get the most out of the picture afterwards. I had to lift the ISO a little bit just to make sure that it is not too dark. We're going to run through. I just want to see what the profile correction does. I don't like what it does with the line, so we're going to uncheck that. Alright, so camera calibration. There is a theory that this must be done at the end of the picture. I do not agree with that. I like to do that before, and because I looked at the picture before I started this, I know that the setting that I want to work with is camera standard, and that will be for Canon. So we're going to run through the basics. Alright, we look at the picture. There's a couple of ways that you can handle the white balance. We're just going to go quickly today, and we're just going to select around about there. In fact, I want it a little bit warmer, so I'm going to take it to 5,850. I can even lift it maybe one more. Let's take it to 6.1. No, I like it warmer. Alright, let's leave it at 6.1. Alright, dial back the contrast to about 30. We're going to drop the highlights to about, I reckon, about 85. 84 is good enough, and for now just lift. Oh, wow, that's very bright. So let's take it to about 75, I reckon. Alright, remember that in photography it is a thing that you've got to be able to see the picture that you have in mind. So I more or less know where I want to take this picture already, and I know that the sliders needs to be gelled around it quite a bit in order to get what I want. The idea is to get detail in the shadows, and this is basically just to prepare the picture to go into Photoshop, where a lot of the other processing will take place. We're going to turn the vibrance up to about 25, should be fine. Saturation we're not going to drop. What we'll do in return, because I want as much saturation for the car and the sky as possible, but for the people in the background, so we're just going to jump into the color mode, drop the oranges, which is the predominant color of skin tone, and the luminance up 1. Alright, that's all I'm going to do to that. Alright, so I'm relatively happy here from what I can see. Alright, okay, there's a bit of dark areas there still, but we'll deal with that. Alright, so I'm going to lift the lights. I'm going to lift the lights about 5 or 10, yeah? I reckon about 5. Alright, then we're going to go down. I don't play around with much on the tone curve here. I know that people like a S curve on a lot of pictures, but I was asked how I do it. I don't use the S curve here. I'm working with all of this. So I hope that you guys follow. Alright, so we've gone into the color mode. We're not going to be touching split toning because I don't want to do something gimmicky. I want a realistic photo where you can see details and you can see the curves of the car to the best of the ability. Alright, because I shot at 400 ISO, I suppose I can drop that out now. Because I shot at 400 ISO, I'm not going to be sharpening this too much. Otherwise you're going to get a very noisy picture. But I am going to lift it to 50. I'm going to keep the detail at 25 and the radius at 1. Masking I'm going to take up a little bit. Now there are tricks to see how far you want to mask it. I'm going to mask it about 75% for this particular picture, and I'm going to take the noise reduction to about 30-35. Each picture, you've got to go in and you've got to set this, and you've got to go to one-on-one to make sure that you get the best possible picture. this is just how I prepare my car pics before I work with them further. I have been very, very, very um, conservative when it came to clarity, and because there's people in the picture, I won't lift it over 25. Because there's people in the picture. When there's not people in the picture, I might press that even further. But obviously, that will affect your highlights and your shadows, well, your whites and your blacks as well. All right. In this case, I think that the whites are relatively in good balance because of the light that I've added on the tone curve. All right. So we're basically happy here. I'm just going to slide that to middle. All right. Happy with that. Lens corrections, we've determined what we're going to use and what we're not going to use. We're not going to put in any vignette at this stage, especially because we plan to take this to Photoshop camera standard, and I'm happy to tuck it out like this. All right, this is a good starting point. It's actually still a bit too much shadows for me, so I'm just going to go in there. Just want to see what is going on here. All right, this is looking at your picture at 1 by 1, and there's still too much shadows there for me, so I'm just going to lift it a little bit. All right, that seems fine. Okay, so basically you just want a picture that you can take over to Photoshop. Like I say, it's because there is people in this picture. All right, a little bit more conservative with the sliders. All right, so we're going to export. We're going to export this. I've set up something before the time to set it out, but I'll run through it quickly. I'm just going to take it to a specific folder. Exporting, I know a lot of people like to export to TIFF. Those file sizes are enormous. Not that I mind working with it, but JPEG works fine. I've got it at 100%. I've got it in the sRGB color space. I've lifted my pixel per inch to 300 in case I want to do a print. I'm not giving it a resize to fit. And that is all that I'm doing. So I'm just going to export this. All right, and then meanwhile, let me pause this while we wait for that to happen. All right, so we've exported it. I'm going to minimize this, and I'm just going to open the picture so that we can see it. Overall, it's looking pretty decent to start working with it in Photoshop. All right. So I think this is where I'm going to end this video. I'm restricted to 10 minutes on this free software that I'm using from Microsoft. Let me just tell you what I'm using there so that you can see it. It is called this Microsoft Expression Encoder 4. That can be downloaded straight from Microsoft. So if you're happy with the result there, I would have liked to see more here, but this is something that I will be handling later. I want to stay away from the ghosting, adding too much highlights and too much clarity. You might see some ghosting around these areas and around the people, all the edges. All right, and we managed to stay away from that. That is something that you're going to have to check as you move the sliders around. We will also be cropping and repositioning the photo for best impact a little bit later. At this stage, we're just working with a basic file. I hope you enjoyed that, and part 2 will follow soon. Welcome to Max Stern Photography, and this will be part 2, the Photoshop side of editing automotive photos. So once again, just working against the clock here. I've opened up the picture in Photoshop, and in order to save time, I've done some of the work, but I'm going to run through it. So this is the image that we brought from Lightroom. I then duplicated the layer, and what I'll show you is I took it to the Topaz selection of plugins, and let me stop there so that you can see the two plugins that we'll be using today is the Topaz Labs collection and then also the Nick collection. plugins. These can be downloaded. You can just Google them at a later stage. I might put the links down so that you guys have got easy access to it. So those two are the ones that we're going to be using. Duplicated the layer. I went into Topaz Adjust, and then I went to exposure correction. So what we got was this. Quite a significant difference, as you can see. All right. Now, I've got a standard work process. Some of the stuff that I do, you won't necessarily be able to see on your side. I don't know. This is the first time I'm recording something like this. The next step that I did is I duplicated the layer again, and then I went into the filter selection. Let me just select my layer. I went into the layer, the image adjustments, and then shadows and highlights. All right, so I'm going to open that so that you can see the effect. That is sort of the type of effect that you're looking at. Now, I've left the settings as I used it for this image so that you can see more or less where it is. But it is very important that you're able to see the changes. So if I have to take that down to, you see what happens in the background. I mean, you've got to be able to say, all right, well, listen, I should take it about to there. I think on the first run I had it at 220 pixels and so on. The percentage, the tonal width range, you know, all that. Those things are important. I'm also bringing in a bit of mid-tone contrast here. Let me just show you what that does. All right. So sliding around with those sliders, you've got to find where the image works best for you and for the vision that you have for the image in the end. So I'm going to cancel this out because I've done it already. And that was the result. From there, what I've done is I duplicated the layer again. All right. I'm going to show you what I did. I went into filters, I went into Topaz, and I went into detail 3. All right. So one of the reasons why I've skipped these steps to do it quickly is because some of these plugins takes a bit of time to process. So the next one then gave us that. I ran a medium on the highlights, and I ran a strong on the shadows. You'll see it when you go into that plugins, that the options in the highlights and the shadow section. Apply the first one, go into the shadows, select, and then OK it. When it came out, it was a bit strong for me. So what I did is I actually dialed back to about 80% the layer. I then duplicated the bottom layer and just merged the two so that I got the result here as you see it. All right, so the next step now, we're going to go as we go, and this is where I don't know what you can expect. All right, so the next one we're going to do is we're going to select that layer, and we're going to go into filters, then collection, color effects Pro 4. All right, unfortunately you might have to wait some time here as it load. Do yourself a favor, go and download those plugins. Those plugins are very helpful in just about everything that you do in photography, just to get the best out of your picture. This is not where there is major photo manipulation. This is just enhancing the image. All right, so you've got a typical slider once Color Effects Pro open. You've got a basic slider, and then usually it will open on the last one that you used on the range, on the settings that you've got here on the left hand side. What do we want to do? And this is where the important bit comes in. You've got to have a look at the picture, and you've got to see what bugs you about the picture. All right. In this case, we're not wanting to transfer anything from daylight into tungsten or anything like that. So that setting is not going to work. Now I've got here at recipes, I've got a whole lot of recipes that I can apply that I've created myself. But for today's exercise, I'm not going to do that. Once again, when you're looking for detail, especially with vehicles, you want a lot of detail. So let's open the detail extractor. Interesting thing about the detail extractor, it plays around with your saturation and your contrast. Now, that may be much more than what you want. You see how it's almost looking HDR here already? All right. That is not the goal of the exercise. We do not want to take it that far. So I'm going to dial this back, way back to about 7%. All right. I want a very, and you can even set it to fine, all right, so that those changes are really minute. I'm going to turn off and on the effect just so that you get an idea of more or less what we're talking about. All right, I'm happy with that. I'm not going to play around with the shadows and the highlight sliders here because that is another process. We have handled that, and at the end we'll correct minor adjustments. So add the filter. Say add filter, and then we go on to the next thing. The next thing that we want to work with here is your I think let's go to tonal contrast. This is the standard setting that it opens up with. Once again, very strong. If you like it, if that is what you're going for, take it. This is not the look that I want to go for. All right, so I've got a habit of dialing back everything to 0. All right, I don't know if you know, you can't double click this, you've got to physically slide it. All right, you've got to physically slide it. All right, so this one works a little bit in reverse. You see how it adds about 20% saturation here? I usually dial that back to 10 because there's so many of the other cycles where I'm boosting vibrance already. I don't want to over boost it. All right, and then you can also choose between a high pass type of look, fine, balanced, strong, all those different things that you want to go. I usually work on standard, fine, or high pass depending on the picture that I'm going to be working with. In this case, we're going to choose standard. All right. One of the places where we lack is working with midtones. So I'm going to most of your sliders does not give most of your settings do not give much attention to your midtones, and that is usually where a lot of the people fall short on the editing, is that they're not working with midtones. So I'm going to set that to about 6. There's not going to be major differences here. The highlights I'm going to pump a bit now because we've dialed back that highlights. Remember in Lightroom we took them way down. Now I'm taking what is the existing ones, the ones that remain here, and those highlights that we want to accentuate, we're now accentuating without losing detail in the picture. All right, shadows, if you lift it up, you can see what happens here. It just goes haywire. So if you want the HDR effect, this is where you can do it manually as well. I'm not going to go too much, but I do want to lift the shadows a little bit. You see why I'm not working with the shadow and highlight protectors? Because your eye should be relatively okay here. What is the difference? That is the difference. A minor, very minor difference in the picture, and mostly so in the highlights. All right, I'm going to add a filter. I sometimes bring in a reflector effects. Now you can put a gold or a silver or a soft gold a reflector effect in on that. That will deal on with on another stage, because on this image I do not want to bring in anything. If you look at where the sun is coming from, you can warm up that light, and maybe I'll just do that quickly. I don't know how we're doing on time, but let me just add the reflector effects just so that you can see what you're capable to do in this. Currently it is on gold, it is coming directly from below, but you want to match where the sun is coming from, or you want to work with, shall I say, reflective value. So you're either going to turn this around and bring it to about there to give a reflective, but this doesn't look natural. When you take it to the other corner, all right, you're going to get light from that side on the clouds that doesn't seem natural. That is the reason why I wouldn't opt to go with this. All right, then final, you've got an interesting one here that you can have a look. You'll see that it will change. Right, so I don't know quite where that video cut off. I'm going to carry on, so I'm just going to go through it again. When you select the next one here without adding the filter, you'll see that this will change to the filter that you are now looking at. Pro Contrast gives you the opportunity to do color correction within the contrast range. So if you've got a bit of color cast, you can deal with this here, and then there's some other filters that you can deal with that problem with as well. As a rule, I am pretty happy with what I'm seeing here. I'm not going to be adding more to this because It's starting, the highlights are starting to get strong around here, and that is exactly what you want. You just want to be able to see everything very nicely. All right. So I'm quite happy with this. And for your sake, what I'll do is I'll remove this one that I didn't use. All right. And I'll save this recipe. And then maybe we'll see if I can export this and make it available. So let's just call this mid-val racer detail. All right. So we'll just save that one. You'll see that it goes into my recipes, and that is fine. Click OK. This is going to take a while, so I'm just going to pause the picture while it is doing that. All right. Okay, so we're going on. This is now finished processing, and basically that is the difference after making use of the recipe from Color FX Pro. You'll see that the recipe that I saved has actually now created a name there. At this stage, the picture is looking pretty decent, and as a whole, I'm starting to feel quite happy with this. I'm going to zoom in just to see what we look like at 100%, and as you can see, it is starting to look a bit gritty around here, and there is there's quite a bit of noise reduction, noise coming into this, and we're going to have to run a process of noise reduction in order to deal with this image further, but not yet. The next step that I'm going to take, and I'll start with the filter so that you guys can follow. I'm going to use Silver FX Pro. Now, to those that have been in photography for a while and editing with these plugins, this is a black and white plugin. They've got some of the nicest presets here available. What do I do with this? I actually use these black and whites as filters, and I'm going to show you how I do that. In this case, we are looking for detail, but we're still looking for a relatively smooth, balanced look. All right. So I'm going to go into the classic presets, and I'm going to be looking for something called where is it? High structure smooth. All right. All right. So that is the difference between the two. Let's just let that load. All right. And the whole time doing this, in the highlights regions, on the edges, we are looking for ghosting. It is already starting to show some ghosting here. Usually what I would do here is I'll just click through the different color filters and just check more or less what is it that I want to apply in the final one. I must tell you, I usually work with an orange or a yellow, and in this case, the orange is looking pretty decent. So I'm going to dial the strength of that filter down to about 35%. All right. Film types. Now this is with grain and grit. I've just found that these old film types gives a lot. Just to give you an idea of what we are working with between the two here already, it is massive. The difference between these are absolutely mind-boggling, but you're going to find even more grit in those areas now. Well, in all areas, but it's going to be most visible in those areas. So I'm just going to increase the grain per pixel to 500, and I'm going to make it as soft as possible. All right. I'm going to stop recording before I press OK, just so that we can save on some recording time. Okay, so it is exported or finished the process, and that is the layer that we have with. So what am I doing with a black and white here in a color photo? All right, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to change the blending mode of the layer to luminosity. At first, it looks almost terrible. Oh, well, that's pretty nice if that's the type of thing that you want to go for, but very unrealistic up here. Very dramatic, and we can see strong shadows there that's been accentuated. So I'm going to dial that opacity down to around 15 to 20%. And unfortunately, I have to see the difference between the two. We'll go with the 20% here. All right. 20%. Now remember, if you're working in multiple layers and you apply something like this and you want to remain, you want this picture to remain to work on the next one, just duplicate the bottom layer, okay, and then take the top one and just merge it down. All right. So that is the difference between the two after we have applied that luminosity. All right. At this point, we've reached the point where there's a bit more ghosting there, but I don't have the time to go in to that. Bit more than what I would like, but hey, we're going to have to make do. At this point, we're probably going to go onto actual pixel size so that we can see what the picture looked like. We're going to duplicate the layer. The reason that I duplicate the layer, and we'll just call this noise reduction. All right. That's the layer's name. We're going to go into the filter topaz. The reason why for topaz that I duplicate the layer is because in Nik you've got the option to let it automatically create a new layer. In topaz I haven't found that yet. So we're going to go into a setting called denoise. The nice thing about working in these different layers is that you can actually play with the changes afterwards. So once you apply it to the image and it is too strong, you can always just dial the layer's opacity down a little bit and just bring back a bit from that previous layer. Alright, so you can see there's quite a bit. It's a bit strong here, so I'm going to go one up. Alright, and that's the difference. Alright, there's going to be some grid remaining, but you're not completely going to lose definition on the background, and you're not going to lose your sharpness or your clarity completely with doing this. Still looking pretty decent. So I'm going to stop the recorder or pause. Okay, so I had to start recording on a new file because we ran out of time there. I don't know what I did wrong. But let's carry on. So after that process is finished, that is basically the finish you're going to see between the two. It's not too strong for me, so I'm not going to be playing with the opacity here. In fact, I think it is a little bit too little, but you know what to do now at least. Seeing the ghosting there around the edges as we were talking about earlier on, so that is something just to be a little bit more mindful when you've got a bit more time to play with the image. Alright, so we're just going to zoom out here. Alright, let's just make it fit screen. Alright, so from this level, you can't see the difference between the one where the noise has been reduced and the other one. Alright, next thing that I'm going to do is at this point, I'm going to take all the layers that I've worked with, and I'm going to merge them all into one single layer, because at this point I think it would be interesting to see what is the difference between the file that we brought from Lightroom and what we have accomplished in Photoshop. And that is the difference. It is a tremendous difference. Now, after this, you can still go in and take out sections, and I mean the cropping. Those are things that you guys don't need help with, I believe. If you do, please let me know. I'll do a separate video on that. But that is not the point of this little video. What I do at this stage usually is I create a second layer one last time. Alright, I go into the Topaz collection, Topaz Adjust, and this will give you a good opportunity to see what it looks like. And there's a whole lot of presets here on the left hand side, ones which I'm not going to go into, and I just want to have a look at what will the exposure correction do. Alright, so we're just going to see what is the difference there. I'm going to hit OK here. It should be relatively quickly. It should be processed relatively quickly. Alright, and then we can just toggle between the two and see where are we most happy. Alright, now I've got, at this late stage, I've got an interesting rule. For Topaz, I give 75% permittance on the decision on the exposure correction. Alright, so that must actually say exposure correction. And then that I will dial back. I'll merge that down. Alright, so we've got 100% picture there again. And then the other thing that I like to do is I duplicate the layer. Alright, I go in on my adjustments for brightness and contrast, and I hit the auto button just to see what the software think where it must be. The software says that the brightness must go up a little bit, the contrast must also be a little bit stronger. I do not quite agree with that. I do not like this image over mine necessarily. But what I will do is I will OK that, give that a 50%, and in this case it might actually be less, but a 50% opacity on this layer, alright, just to see that difference, alright, just so that we know that there's a better range within the image. And as a rule, that should handle the whole process from start to finish. Then the before and the after for part 2. Now, as you guys know, this may last in editing. You can spend a whole lot of time in processing a photo, and I really had to rush through all of this as I wanted to show you what I do. Saving the JPEG for at this stage, baseline. I don't want to give it maximum juice there. You can see because all the layers were merged together, the file size is not something that cannot be handled. Alright, we've got nice detail. I can start critting on this image now already. I can tell you I don't like the ghost lines here. I don't like this little, but this was just the exercise. And with that, we're going to end the video. I'm going to let the video run while I prepare this specific file for social media sharing as well, so that you can see how I do that as well. I've got a different way of dealing with that. I've got presets here, 2048, 1365 pixels, and then I think this one is by 300 dots per inch still. Alright, so I'm going to reduce that. Alright, let's just bring it back to fit the screen. Alright, you can see the clarity in this image already. I just don't like that mild ghosting around these edges. File, save for web. Alright, and this is where I just want to show you, this is where it gets optimized for the web. It's going to bring it down to I think 96 dots per inch, but it optimizes this image. You can do a progressive as well, but a standard optimization should be fine. Save it. Let's make a folder for social sharing. And usually you would do this after you've added your logo already. Like I say, this is just a quick one. You guys know how to add logos, you know how to crop, and that will be the end of it. Alright, it's going to moan now because I have made changes, but we don't want to. So I'm going to open the one saved for social media, and that is what you're looking at. Alright, I'm just waiting. That must be at about 200. Oh, it is not looking around there. These viewers aren't so perfect. So I'll upload this for you guys all together, and I hope you've enjoyed it. It's gonna just, I don't like that. Alright, but it was just a quick one. You've got to have your eye open on that type of thing while you do the edits. Thank you for following this short, well, it's not so short, but this tutorial on how to edit automotive photos. If there's any questions, you guys are more than welcome to contact me on my email or any of the other means on Facebook. All the contact details is available on my website. And let me just take you to my website, then you can somewhere see that. All my contact details is available on my website, and if there's anything you guys can let me know how I can help. Did I open the wrong one? I opened the wrong one. Okay, so Matt's Turn Talents, and if you want to contact me, there is all my contact details. You guys can either call me, WhatsApp, BBM, email, and then you can also find me on Facebook by following this link. So if there's anything, give me a shout. If you wish to find this again, it will probably lay under Matt's blog. I'll have to see whether my website is capable of doing that. Thank you very much for joining me today. Have a nice day.